Outer Now podcast needs your financial support. You might be someone who's struggling yourself with your own mental health. You might be trying to support someone in their journey as they try to make sense of their mental health. Or you might be someone who's just curious in general. And if this podcast has helped you grow, learn, feel more hopeful, feel less alone, and really most of all, has helped you be more empathetic towards yourself and towards those around you, please make a donation. Go to the link in the notes and consider supporting this podcast monthly. It would be greatly appreciated so I can continue to bring value to you, the listener.
It's like once you decide the life of sobriety, it's one day at a time,
Yeah, I could read
There's
your
my
lips. I heard you say sobriety.
yeah, my my sponsor actually just dropped off a chip this past September. Um and I want to say that it
Wow,
was,
cool.
yeah, I
So
five
it's either
years.
6 years or 5 years because you said,
No,
oh
no,
wait,
no, no,
no, because
for
it's
sure. No, it's 17 or 18. So it's it's going to be going on 5 or 6 years. I'm almost positive it's 2017. I don't forget dates. But
and
something,
were you going to Monday nights or were you going to another meeting? Like at that time?
no, I was going to
I mean
Monday night
Humanity
Celebrate
Church.
Life and,
Yeah.
yeah, Humanity Church, and I was going to AA. But what I found is that AA just wasn't an environment um that was really feeding my soul,
Hmm.
because there was like a conflict of beliefs. For me, my higher power, is Jesus. And while a lot of people do have the same higher power, a lot of
Right.
people don't.
Right.
So it was hard for me to um, kind of take what I needed and leave the rest. I found that I was taking everything. So then I just winded up being really confused, and I didn't like
Hmm.
that. It wasn't good for my mental health, you know?
Okay.
So I found I
Hmm.
guess safety and peace
Yeah.
Celebrate Life.
Yeah, it's interesting because like I've been to some other meetings outside of um church related, like what you're talking about, like Celebrate Life, where we and yeah, it seems like the higher power, because I think the guy that started AA was a Christian, the guy like
Mhm,
Bill Wilson or something. So,
mhm,
but I'm guessing the reason why they keep it a little bit more on the general is because it seems like what's important is like the commitment to sobriety more than maybe the things that you do that help your sobriety. I mean, I think that that's in there too, but maybe they just want more people to come, right? Like instead of it just being like, oh, this is a Christian thing. Not that it's good or bad, but yeah, long term here, yeah. I mean, I still do it when I'm in meetings. I'm thinking, oh, I'm thinking Holy Spirit and God and Scripture. I'm not necessarily thinking of other. I wouldn't say, oh, it's just this vague spiritual thing. It's like, no, I know what I mean too, you know. But did you grow
mhm.
up in church? When did faith come into your life? Were you like a church person as a kid?
So I was. Well,
Yeah,
growing up, I did. I went to Calvary Chapel, and if you're familiar with Calvary Chapel,
a little
it's more
bit. Yeah.
conservative. Yeah. So Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. That was the church I grew up in.
Oh
But
wow.
I would, go to church, have this like beautiful like youth experience, and then go home to like chaos. So I correlated
Hmm.
the that Christian experience with my home life, and it wasn't good. So
Hmm.
I would say, while I did grow up in church, it wasn't a good representation of church. Because
Okay,
you're supposed to take church home with you. It's not just supposed to be on Sundays, you know?
for sure. Well, so what was some of the isn't that the first Calvary Chapel church was Costa Mesa?
Yeah, it
Okay,
was with, Chuck Smith,
right. Because I saw. Did you see the movie
I did,
Jesus
yeah.
Revolution? Okay.
Mhm.
There.
Yeah, although, I mean, I wasn't old enough to, go into the big sanctuary, but
How old are
yeah,
you now?
I'm 32. I just had a birthday.
Oh wow! Look at this. Happy
I
birthday in
know.
June. Wait, I
June
think it's
15th. It was on Friday.
June 15th. Wow. Well, happy birthday. Well, we're not that far apart. I'm 37. So
Okay.
yeah,
So we're pretty far apart. No.
I'm old and you're young. So I
Yeah.
just had a birthday. Well, not just now, November, and I did like a little beach bonfire at the beach. And
Yeah, I think I saw that.
yeah, it was fun. And so it's funny because people are like, "Oh, you're still young," and I'm like, people have been saying you're still young for like 15 years. Like I'm 28. They're like, you're still young, right? And then now I'm like, I mean, I'm getting close to 40. That feels maybe
That's
I look young. You don't look your age, so
yeah.
you're
Okay, thank
working.
you.
Anyway, so so I had some chaos in my family life too, and I think uh there was some confusion in that as well because we were very dedicated to church, right? So it's kind of like keep it together on Sundays, but then it's like my parents would fight on the drive home, or we would fight like on our way to church, and it's like, okay, well, it's not about being perfect, but there seemed to be some kind of disconnect of like religious stuff and then reality,
Mhm.
and so what was the chaos? Did that lead you to, or what do you mean chaos? Was it like your parents were fighting, or
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. So, my parents would fight. My dad was on drugs, drinking. My mom, she is a pill popper, you know.
okay,
So
okay,
yeah, and then just growing up, we never had a lot of money, so it was just. I feel like it was this on top of this on top of this, but then I would love when I would go to church and I would be like, well, this is what it's supposed to be. I remember learning the songs, Jesus loves you, and
yeah, yeah,
coming home. And you know what though? I will say though, my mom, she was always faithful with saying prayers before bed. But for me, that was the only time that I was supposed to pray, just right before bed, because I never
Mhm.
saw any. No, nobody prayed any other time. So it was just a little prayer before bed. You
Right,
know,
right.
yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, okay, I relate to that for sure. Like, my mom was both my parents were Christians, but my mom
Mhm.
was the one that was like really on fire for God, which some people might not know what on fire for God means. Just
Right.
like a real very solid example of like I saw her reading her scriptures, I saw her pray. She was a flight attendant as a job, so she traveled,
Mhm.
and like she was a total evangelist, would be one way to say it.
Yeah.
So you have this kind of experience, and then when you were saying that you're when you were writing to me about some of your like substance abuse, how did
Mhm.
that happen? Like, do you remember the first time that you did a drug, and were you like, how did that all? Because I'm always curious. Like usually, it's like the first time you do something, it sticks with you, and then you kind of
Right.
go down that path.
Yeah, absolutely. So I remember the first time that I had a drink and the first time that I had a drug. And for me, today a drink is a drug, but then it wasn't. So a drug then was um, a Norco. My sister had given me a Norco.
Oh, like painkillers.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
And
right.
I just remember um, getting so high off of that one Norco. I was 16.
Okay. Hmm.
Yeah, and I just got like super super um, high off of that one pill. And I remember
Okay.
going over to my friend's house, falling asleep on her couch. But then when I went home, my sister was so scared that something happened to me. And she felt so bad that she had given me a Norco, you know? So,
And
yeah, that was
she asked you, did you ask for it, or was it more like she was like, "Hey, try this thing"?
no, I
Oh,
asked for it.
oh, you asked for
I
it.
asked for it, yeah. And mind you, I had tried weed, and it's so funny because the very first time that I got high off of weed, I winded up going into the bedroom with a flashlight and reading the Bible because I was so I I hated I hated the feeling. I did
Yeah.
not like the feeling of, you know, being high.
Interesting. I
Yeah.
think I smoked in 10th grade, and I tried to do my math homework because I thought it would like make me smart, and I was like, "Oh no, that's for like people that do this like all the time."
Yeah.
So 16, you have this experience, and then did you just then want it again? And
Yeah.
because you said weed didn't work, so there's this other layer, like, did that, and then that led to
No.
other
So
things?
even though I had a bad experience with weed, I didn't learn. So I kept
Mhm.
doing it, hoping, "Oh, it's gonna be better," you know? So, I guess speaking from, like, when I took the Norco, I just kept taking it because I remember feeling great, like, none of my problems, existed anymore. When I took that one Norco, I didn't
Hmm.
I felt, um, like all my insecurities went away, you know?
Hmm.
I always kinda had this complex of not being white enough for the white people, not being Mexican enough for the Mexican people because I'm half white, half Mexican, but I don't speak
Oh, okay.
Spanish. But, I also I don't look white, so it's like I could never really fit in. But when I took, um, pills,
Hmm.
uh I didn't care. I just felt like, I was the greatest thing since sliced bread,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah,
So,
well, it's interesting because I think a lot of times you hear, um, yeah, we escape into these things, and I think the Christian narrative is like God is supposed to be, the thing that we go to instead of
yeah.
a long list of things that we can do as people. It's not just drugs or alcohol. It's like eating. It can be
Mhm.
entertainment. I mean, there's so many things that are like, not all of those things were around when scripture is being written, but they're here now,
Right.
especially in our kind of modern American world where, sure, there's poverty, but we have so much access to so many things. So you feel like you didn't know who you were, like your identity was still being formed because you're like in high school,
Yeah.
and now you're taking this thing that makes you feel not you, but you probably didn't know who the real you was still anyway.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But I felt like I was like a cluster of insecurities,
Hmm.
which I didn't know at the time they were insecurities. I hated myself,
Okay.
and I was looking for love, and so I found pills first, um, and I felt loved,
Hmm.
I felt loved by friends, by family, um, or maybe I just didn't care if I didn't feel loved. 'Cause I was
Hmm.
not. So it's
Didn't.
just a way
Yeah.
to cope.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Didn't care that I felt loved. Okay. So, and then, so like, how was your experience in school then with all this? Like, were you a good student, or did you
Yeah.
struggle, or yeah?
So in fact, I was a pretty good student.
Okay.
Uh, yeah. So I'll say my um, junior year, I got my first boyfriend, and he was older. And at the time, he was much older. Like
Like an
right.
adult?
Yeah, he was
Oh,
like 22, and I was only 16. Yeah.
wow.
So
Asking the obvious questions over here,
I
Jared.
so
Let's
it was
ask
kind
some
of
more.
like, yeah, it was kind of towards like like the end of my junior year. Anyways, so I met him, and um, I feel like my drinking really took off because he was
Okay.
able to buy it,
Okay. Right.
So
Right.
yeah, so he would buy me alcohol, and so I kind of feel like, and also pills. They, it's not like they were easy to get, and I wasn't addicted at that point. I wasn't like, oh, I have to have pills just yet. So it was mainly in high school. It was a lot of drinking, partying, on weekends. So overall, I was a pretty good student. I graduated. I only took 3 classes my senior year because I was ahead of credits, and I took um, workers comp, and I was an ROP. Yeah, so I was a pretty good student.
Oh, wow. Okay. And
Yeah,
then do you have siblings?
I do.
Oh, okay. So what
Yeah,
were you, are you the oldest or where are you on the?
no, no. So I actually have 3 brothers and one late sister. She passed in 2014.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Okay.
yeah, she passed in 2014, and then I have 3 brothers. So I have one younger brother and then 2 older brothers.
Okay. And then where are your parents still together or?
No, they got a divorce when I was 10.
Okay. Okay. So that was a while ago. So, oh, so you're like in here. So where were you like living? Was your like mom your favorite parent or your dad or did you go
Okay.
back and forth?
Yeah. So
Well, maybe
okay.
don't say, but
So that's
just kidding.
yeah. Okay. So let me just kind of explain it to you.
Yeah, sure.
So when my mom and dad got a divorce, my mom, um, she liked to chase her boyfriends. So initially, um, that's when we moved to Costa Mesa, and um, that's when I felt like, um, we were more consistent with church, right? But
Okay.
she was kind of still seeing my dad, but it was really chaotic. And eventually they got a divorce. And my mom moved to Oregon, and I
Okay.
moved with my mom to Oregon. She had a boyfriend in Oregon. That didn't work out. And then she remarried another guy in Oregon.
Okay. Okay.
And then she moved to Texas for that guy. He
Okay.
winded
Wow. So you're in Oregon, California, Oregon, Texas.
And
Okay.
then um, I didn't want to live there in Texas. The school was too hard. They were super advanced, and I I just did not like it. I didn't like the weather. I felt out of place. So I was like, I want to go live with dad. So I went and I got on a plane and I moved in with my dad. Um, I was a freshman,
Okay.
and yep, I moved back with my dad. Um, but my dad didn't have um, a place of his own. He was living actually in a shelter, um, for like a homeless shelter, but it was pretty nice. It wasn't like a homeless shelter, one that I
Yeah,
would
where you have to
imagine.
like wait in line or something
Right?
like
It's
that. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. It's
This is
like
California. You mean you came back
California.
to
Yes,
California? Okay. Yeah.
actually, yeah, and it was in Costa Mesa, so it's pretty nice. It was set up, designed like a live-in, for families. And
Right.
so initially I went and we lived there, but then we got kicked out of there because my dad started using again. So we got kicked out of the shelter. And so then we were really like officially homeless. So,
Oh, wow. Okay.
yeah. So, pretty quickly we moved back down to Chino Hills with my dad's friend, in what you would call a dope house. I don't know if you know what that is, but a dope house is where people sell
Hmm.
drugs out of it.
Right.
But this was a pretty like,
Not dope is in a cool house to live.
no, dope as in drug, a drug house. Yeah.
Right.
So we lived in a drug house, but um, yeah, so we lived in a drug house. We rented a room, and so when I say drug house, I don't want you to get this idea that there were like people doing like crack like in the living room. They did crack in the restroom. So they didn't they didn't it wasn't
But a
like
place where like what you would see, I have so many movies in my mind, which is not always helpful with things like
right.
we've all seen well, not, it's like Breaking Bad or whatever, right?
Right,
Drugs,
right,
but it's probably in reality, maybe not
right. And
exactly.
so yeah, so they sold drugs out of the back of the house, and then we rented a room inside of the house.
Okay, yeah,
There were just a lot. It was a lot of traffic.
right,
It's probably no place that I should have been living, but
right.
but it was somewhere that my dad could put a roof over our head. And so he would go on episodes of doing good and then not so good, of course, because the environment, you hang out in a barber shop long enough, you're going to get a haircut. So he
Yeah.
had a few haircuts. Yeah. And so then I was living with my dad from then on.
Okay, wow. So and then what do you do when you like graduate high school?
Well, ultimately, we were able to get an apartment and then a house before I graduated high school. But
Okay.
I moved out actually before I graduated high school. I moved out when I was 16. So a lot happened when I was 16. Yeah, I moved out, and I rented a room from a lady from church. Um,
Hmm.
I rented out a room from her, and then I was pretty much on my own.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing the background. And so you move out on your own, and then like, okay, so you had said, or maybe it was before we started recording, you have sobriety, but that was not until 2017. So then what's the continuation of, like, what was your rock bottom for wanting to get sober?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say in 2013, I'd say is when it started to get my addiction started to
Right.
get pretty bad. So um, the drinking had obviously turned into um, weed, pills, anything I could get my hands on, I was doing it.
Hmm.
And then um, my sister died in 2014 of
Oh,
suicide.
right. Oh, that's how she died.
She died.
Wow. How old was she?
She was 27.
Wow. Okay. Wow. I did not know that. I mean, there's a lot I don't know about you, so
Yeah,
just
no
so
worries.
everyone
Yeah.
knows.
No, that's
Wow.
okay. Yeah,
Wow.
so and then that was kind of a catalyst. I was like, "Okay, I don't have my best friend."
Hmm.
Um, and so then the drugs just got harder. Ultimately, I started to use heroin,
Hmm.
methamphetamine.
So was she, just to go back to that real quick? So like, was she getting help for struggling,
No,
or
she
was
really,
it just kind of just came out of kind of nowhere, kind of thing?
right. So she was taking antidepressants
Okay.
and anti-anxiety medication, but she was also abusing Norco, alcohol. She
Hmm.
had started to dabble in Adderall. Um, and sh- her toxicology report the day of her suicide was outrageous. Um, so uh, as far as getting help, she really wanted to get well. She just didn't know how.
Yeah.
And if I could tell her what I know now,
Yeah.
that there is really hope for the hopeless. I didn't know then though, so I kind of felt like um, she was hopeless. I in that phase of my life because I was actively using, I wasn't in my right mind. I felt like we were both hopeless. We,
Hmm.
we're, you know, um, but I didn't know that she was mentally as bad as she was because she had attempted suicide before. I had attempted suicide before, but never like followed through about it. We had talked about it,
Hmm.
um, and she just you know, it was
Yeah.
her time.
Yeah. It's an interesting, um when I went through I just celebrated 10 years coming out of I had three suicide attempts, but the third
Mhm,
one was in 10 years ago in 2013. And
mhm,
the third one, I ended up in a coma because I
mm,
took like all the pills that I had. I made it out, and I mean, I woke. It was 3 days, and actually, that's how I moved to Pomona, because there was a church, New Life Church, Foursquare Church, and they prayed for
Mm.
me, and that's how I ended up in Pomona, and that's how I ended up at Humanity Church eventually
Yeah,
too.
that's
So,
awesome. A Foursquare. Uh-huh.
but I was 27 when that all went down, and Rick Warren's son was 27 when he died, and his that was a month. So anyway, I don't not to make a big deal out of 27, but I don't know, there's something about um we all struggle, and I think these things now for a while um happen earlier, right? Like people, like teens are suicidal, and that's probably always been true to a certain extent. But so it's like by the time someone gets to 27, depending on how they've lived, it might feel like they've lived for like 50 years of pain or whatever, or sorrow. And so I'm sorry for the loss, and thanks for sharing that. So yeah, I mean, it's like you found hope, like what you just said. So you got on the path to getting help. And I didn't mean to skip ahead by saying, tell us
Yeah,
about your rock bottom.
yeah, absolutely. And you know what? There
Yeah,
wasn't much after that because, like I said, it was a catalyst. So from there, it just went down, down, downhill.
right.
Um, and uh, however, it was short lived because I would OD, or I got arrested, or I tried to get sober and it didn't work.
Hmm.
Um, and so I just, I finally cried out, and you know, the road to recovery, it hasn't always been an easy one. So, there were two relapses, but the last relapse in 2017, where I overdosed, and I just ended up in the hospital. My body was completely shut down. My heart was functioning at 30%, which is, I don't even know how I made it out. It was only by God's grace.
Your heart
And
was at 30%. You mean in one of your overdose times?
my last
The
overdose, which
last one.
was the last
Okay.
time I ever used, yeah, it um my whole body shut down. So my kidneys, and then um my lungs and my heart, it was all shutting down. And so
Wow.
it put me into a heart attack. So it's not like a heart attack where there are, I guess, two types of heart attack. So it was a heart attack where my heart wasn't functioning at um, its full capacity. So my heart had a heart attack, and it was only functioning at 30%.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Wow.
they had me, the tubes down my throat, everything, and then just by God's grace, I'm alive.
Wow. And so, because I think sometimes, I mean, I don't think maybe some people are experts in addiction and recovery. I
Mhm.
mean, not me, but I think there's like multiple rock bottoms, right? Or
Absolutely.
with bipolar or depression, they call it having an episode, right? Which is where you're maybe you're in a hospital, maybe you're not, and things are out of control for a certain amount of time. You don't know how long it's going to last. So sometimes I think if people might not understand this stuff very well, they would think, um, you have one rock bottom, and then they would assume like, hey, you should get it together after this, right?
Right, right.
But I think the nature of addiction, and I think even like the spiritual part of it, is like God, um, thank God for praying people, right? Moms, families, leaders, because really you're talking about God's mercy in all these different times where
Mm.
you got in trouble, but it could have been worse, or whatever. You just kept going. And so did you relate to that? Like you had multiple rock bottoms, but then for some reason that heart attack thing was like God really telling you, or the universe or whatever, saying like, hey, you need to get it together now, or not get it together, but go on the path of sobriety.
Right. So I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, there are definitely there can be multiple rock bottoms. For me, my rock bottoms kept getting more at the bottom. So it's like
Yeah, there you go.
just when I thought I hit rock bottom, I'm like, I'm at rock bottom. I cannot get any further
Yeah,
down.
it's like quicksand or
Then
something,
yeah,
right?
and then
Yeah,
I
yeah.
literally like
The bottom is
yeah,
yeah.
and short of taking my life, I'm like, okay, this is rock bottom. And I think for me, my rock bottom, uh, I remember it so like vividly, and I can just like put myself in the hospital because I remember just
Mm,
crying out to God and saying, you know what, God, I I need you and I surrender.
mm,
I don't know. I remember like word for word, like I don't know what that looks like, but I know I need your help. I need your
mm.
help. And there wasn't a white light. There wasn't um like
Right.
this, you know, it just kind of happened. I
Mm,
just knew that God, I hung on to that God goes before me and I allowed him to go before me.
mm,
And the the craving, the want to use again, I never had it. And
mm.
I think that is a miracle.
Wow.
It really is. Although I was working a program as well. I was going to celebrate life, and that's when I made the decision to kind of dive
You mean after.
after this one. Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
remember,
Okay. Got
I was already going to AA, and I believe Celebrate Life as well. Um, I'm not
it. Wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I'm not
cool.
I believe I was going to both of them. But when that happened, yes, I do, because I remember Sally and, Cher, they came to pray for me while I was in the hospital.
Mhm.
But anyways, um, from that experience, I decided to dive in to Celebrate Life and kinda let go of AA.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I want to go back to thank you for sharing. It's good to talk to you and see you, and I just see you on Facebook. So
Yeah, I know.
no, it's okay. It's totally fine. I don't go to Monday nights anymore, but I went for 3-ish years. So
Yeah, yeah, I
um
remember.
yeah, yeah. And then I wanted to go back to something you said that's very profound, which is like you said, like the desire wasn't there anymore, right? And I think um there's like that scripture in the Psalms that says like delight yourself in the Lord, and then he gives you the desires of your heart. So
Mhm.
kind of like kind
Wow.
of like a
Mhm.
math equation, right? So it's like
Right.
it could say get the desires of your heart and then go do something, right? It's like reversed. It's saying you only know what you really want, I think, by some experience of God, because we know we can want things that are quote unquote sinful. And I think a lot of times addiction is sort of a like whatever desires you want, it gets really really mixed up in things, like what we've been talking about, right? Substances, or and it's kind of like
Yeah.
I think people put a lot of pressure to for that to change, like once I want the right thing, then I do the right thing, and I think that's what makes sobriety hard. Is takes a lot, it can take work, but then what you're saying is just important for people to hopefully find hope in that, not the other way around. Like, oh well, easy for you. God took away your desires.
Oh, no.
No,
And,
yeah, yeah.
right. And when I say took away my desire, it was that need to escape. It was that need to fill myself up with something temporary. I surrendered to God, and I, of course, I dove into worship. I dove into His Word. I dove into church, and that filled me up.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're human, and my flesh is roaring every morning, like you said, if
Yeah,
it's not
yeah,
drugs, it's not that, it's food, like, yeah, my flesh creeps up daily, but I have to die to self every morning,
right,
or for
right.
sure, you know, I'd, yeah, I'd be not doing so well.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about so how long have you been married? I think I saw you at like the Christmas party and you guys were engaged or something. Or maybe you were
Okay.
dating. I don't know. It's like the
Yeah.
end of 2019. It was right before COVID. Remember in the basement?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That might have been the last time I saw you actually.
Yeah. So it's going on 3 years.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So 2020, wait, when did you guys get married?
2020, October 2020.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that makes sense. Okay. And then you have kids. So what's been like, what is the whole, because you typed in the thing, you said I thought I would never have a family or something like that.
Yeah.
I never thought this would be possible. And so what is like it been like having kids and being a mom and being a wife and all that.
Honestly,
So
one of the biggest blessings.
yeah.
And I can honestly say I never thought that I was worthy.
Hmm.
If I'm being completely honest with myself, I never uh, thought I was worthy of being a mom, worthy of being a wife. I never thought I was good enough. I never thought
Hmm.
uh, I could be loved, you know,
Hmm.
uh, until I fell in love with Jesus. And when I fell in love with Jesus, I met a man who loves Jesus, and he was loving me like
Yeah,
Jesus.
yeah.
I didn't know how to take it,
Not sure
because
why I'm laughing, guys, but anyway, just ignore that.
when you love God,
Right.
when you're right this way, you're able to be right this way. And so um, it was the first time I had ever met somebody who treated me so good. He showed me a love I had never known. So at first I was like just trying to push it away, trying to sabotage it because that's what I do. you know,
Mhm.
I'm learning how to walk this narrow path, right? It's hard. And then eventually I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna let go and let God and see what happens. And that was the
Mhm.
best decision I ever made. You
Yeah,
know, I I have an amazing husband and I have an amazing
it's awesome.
kid, not just one.
2 kids
I have two. I
with the
keep popping
same
them out.
name as 2 of my nephews,
Yeah.
Asher and Levi. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And well, I think too, since this has come up a lot in this podcast, I mean, I've done like 150 plus episodes. Not all of
Mhm.
them are talks with people, but about 70% of the episodes are talks with people.
Mhm.
And I think just in conversations in life, it's like love is sort of, receiving love can almost be harder than giving love, right? It's easier sometimes to just, um, use the love languages or whatever, right? Give someone a gift or show up when someone's in a hard time. But then, if someone's loving on us, sometimes it can be like, makes us uncomfortable, like, wow, why do people love me so much? This is annoying. Like, like find something wrong with me, and
Right.
so I think that it's a beautiful thing to learn how to obviously do both of those things. I mean, both of giving and receiving is what makes the world go around. And then what do you like? What do you like about being a mom, or what's hard about being a mom?
Right. So I think one of the biggest gifts that God has given me is the ministry of motherhood.
Yeah.
I I think being able to love my kids and give them what I wasn't given and just, you know, guard them, nurture them, and also at the same time, you know, expose them to certain things. Um, it's amazing, you know. I I love being a mom and I love um, teaching them, and just e- every day it's new. I love it, and I want to homeschool. I you know, I just I love every aspect of
Mm.
motherhood except waking up at night. I don't like that. So my husband does that. I won't lie. I don't I don't think I've ever changed a diaper in the middle of the night. Like,
Okay, there you go. You're
when
just,
they're except when they're newborns. So yeah.
well, yeah. I mean, I'm not my well. I guess um, I'm not an expert. 'Cause I don't. Yeah, it's always usually it takes like a year, right? The
Uh,
first year can be hard
well,
with the sleep, or give or
right.
take.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess. But when they're newborns, it's like the first 2 months, I would say.
Right. Yeah.
Where yeah, when they have that little baby cry, and so I'm like, "Okay, I'll get up with you, I'll change your diaper." But after 2 months, it's just like this horrific cry, and I'm like, "Get your child."
Yeah. Figure just you go figure it out on your own. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's
Yeah,
teach you some independence.
yeah, so, I mean, do you want kids? Do you wanna get married? I know this is your podcast, but,
Yeah. No, you can ask me.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I
So
guess it's
you said you're 37?
yeah. Yeah. I mean,
That's when I met my husband. He was 37, I was 27.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go. Okay, 10 years
Yeah.
that yeah. I mean, I think as I've gotten older, I mean, I think it's a little bit different as a man because it's like, women they have the biological clock of their bodies with kids, I mean, I definitely sometimes I'm like not sure about kids as much as I love my nephews.
Yeah.
I think I'm more like marriage for sure. I don't know about children.
Right.
Maybe that's just because I'm getting older, or I mean, honestly, I've had a lot of my own struggles too. So like sometimes I think, um, obviously you want to be with someone who loves you and your whole story, right? So it's not like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm unlovable because of my issues, but
Mhm.
it seems like it would take a special person to understand all of those things. But yeah, it's a good question. So I don't know. I mean, but then when I see my nephews, I'm like, man, at least having one kid would be cool.
Yeah.
Maybe not four, but
Right. I
so,
definitely understand that.
yeah. And so what you guys are just gonna keep it at two children, and
I want
you don't know.
to just for right now, I
Maybe
am
that's too
so
personal. Sorry, but
no, not at all.
uh,
No. I am so content with my 2 boys. I
yeah,
think it's gonna be still easy to not easy to travel, but, it's
right, yeah, yeah,
still okay, Levi on Michael's lap, Asher on my lap. We're still able to fly,
yeah,
uh,
yeah,
and
yeah. Road trips would be
I feel like
really hard.
yeah, I mean, the ratio is right, 2 parents, 2 kids.
Yeah, there you go.
Like
Well,
anything
yeah, they have each other though. Like they grow up with
right,
each other, and I see that
right.
with my two older nephews. They're about 2.5 years apart, and they're like they do golf together. They're like best
Oh,
friends. Yeah,
yeah.
and then the younger one, he's like super excited for Levi, not to be confused with Levi, because he's like a little over 3,
Mhm.
so he's like excited to. So anyway, it's a cool like dynamic where they're all brothers together, obviously, but like the two Noah and Jen are like super fun. Like I was at Disneyland with them, and they're just super like huggy on each other and big bro, little bro, and I'm just like, oh man, that's so special. So they're good, but they got good parents. So
Right.
obviously your kids have good parents.
Aw, thank you.
Okay, so here's my last question. You've already kind of given some advice to people
Mhm,
who might be struggling.
mhm.
Um, and you could say this to anyone who's struggling, or maybe someone who's also a parent too. But like, if someone is kind of feels stuck in their addiction, like whatever it is, right, and they feel hopeless, like, what would you say to that person? What advice would you give, or like, what piece of hope would you give? Because you've already given hope by sharing your story, but
Yeah, absolutely. So, the one thing that, I would tell someone, and I do tell people, That, I mean, Jesus, if you put your hope in him, there's a way. Um, I was empty and I was looking for love in all the wrong places. I was looking for stuff to fill me up by drugs, alcohol, men, money, education,
Mm.
you name it. I put, I invested myself into empty wells, you
Mm.
know? And the the Bible says, um, he says, taste and see that I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's a good
I've
verse.
tasted and I've seen.
Yeah.
He's so good. And it for me, it wasn't um this overnight, white light experience. I slowly fell in love with Jesus. Slowly, I was reading scriptures and worshiping, and I slowly, s- man, I found how much He loves me, and I love
Mm.
Him. You
Mm.
know, and that's the one thing I would tell someone: fall in love with Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, Father's happy Mother's Day. That was a month ago. Okay. It's your mother. So,
That's
and
okay.
also happy Father's Day to your husband and I mean, it's sort of, I feel like both days are a celebration of, love and family and
Yeah.
connection. And, it can be a hard time for people too, obviously, if you've lost people and stuff.
Right.
But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I know we've been chatting on Facebook for a while, and all the timing is always, I'm glad it landed on this day. This is a special day. So
I know. I'm so excited. Well,
okay, well, I'll be in touch with. What'd you say?
it was so good to be on your podcast. Thank you so much again.
Yeah.